Hello everybody, my name is Murray and I am a landscape artist from London here in the UK. I specialise in sunset seascapes where I like to paint the sunset over oceans and over beaches. I do have my own YouTube channel where I like to teach beginners how to paint sunsets and other landscapes, which is called Acrylic Paints. And if you'd like to know more about me as an artist and see my latest artwork, I have my own Instagram and Facebook account, which again is called Acrylic Paints. I'd like to thank Felix very much for giving me this wonderful opportunity to teach you all step by step how to paint this acrylic painting of a sunset over the ocean, where we're going to learn step by step how to paint it.
So a nice easy tutorial today. You're going to need the following colours. They are titanium white, cadmium yellow, matte orange, rose pink, crimson, sap green, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, phthalo blue, iris purple, raw umber and ivory black. So I've got a burnt sienna stained canvas that I've used cobalt blue just to create an outline of all the dark shadows. I've used chalk just to block in a sun and a horizon, because chalk is really good because it leaves no dirty pencil marks. And all I've done is I've used cobalt blue as a shadow to create some nice ocean waves coming towards the beach. And then we're going to have some shimmering sand, and then we're going to have some wet sand in the corner. So if you'd like to pause the video and copy down the outline, please feel free to do so, and we'll get cracking with painting. So I'm going to use a really nice bright titanium white for my sun, and all I'm going to do is just create a little circle, and then I'm just going to create the heat and the glow around the sun. So I'm just going to add some cadmium yellow to lots and lots of titanium white to create a sort of buttery colour, sort of a Naples yellow. And all we want to do is just create a nice glow around our central sun. So what we're doing today, we're just trying to create a nice pastel sunset. So by using this pastel yellow, we can just create this glow. Now you don't have to paint your canvas burnt sienna. The reason I paint my canvas burnt sienna is while we're using these pastel colours such as light yellows and things like oranges, what the brown paint underneath does, it just shows me where I've missed areas and where I need to neaten it up. So I'm just going to add a little bit more cadmium yellow just to make it a little bit brighter, and I'm just going to add a dot of brown. Now brown is really good just to suck a little bit of the colour out to make your colours a bit less vibrant, and it also just makes it look a bit more realistic and a bit more natural. So just adding a dot of the brown will help with your colours. And all I'm doing, I'm just merging the two colours together. So we're just trying to create this lovely glow around the sun. And then gradually we're just going to add a tiny bit of orange. Now orange is very overpowering, so you only need a little bit of orange. And we're just going to create a nice golden colour, so a golden yellow. So just by adding a tiny bit of orange, we can create a little golden glow. And again, we're just merging it into that lighter yellow. So really easy, don't worry about any blending at this stage or any streak marks. So if I zoom in for you so you can get a closer look, all we want to do is just lay the foundation. We just want to lay the background colours. And what we're doing, if you imagine the ocean is kind of like a mirror, what we're going to do is just match the sunlight on our ocean. So the great thing about using chalk for your horizon, you can measure it, and if you make any mistakes you can just wipe it away and it won't leave any marks. You can paint over it, so it's perfect for doing anything that you want to move about in your paintings. And then the good thing about using cobalt blue as a outline for things like your darker shadows, for things like the waves, is while we're using these pastel paints over the top, the cobalt blue is nice and dry, my canvas is nice and dry, and it will shine through and you can still see the outline even if we paint over the top of it. So if you imagine the sun is like a glaring light, and as we go further either side of it and above it, the sky will get a little bit darker in colour. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a tad more orange. I'm just going to test it on my canvas and I'm going to show you how to make it. So we're just going to add still plenty of yellow, but we're just going to add a little bit more orange to make a darker shade of yellow, so a more even golder version of our yellow. And we're just going to apply that either side to create again the glow effect. So if you imagine sort of a colour wheel. You go from yellow to orange. We're just trying to match that in our lovely sunset sky. So just either side, just think of symmetry. If you do it one side, you just sort of kind of want to match it on the other side just so it looks all pretty. And we're just going to go down to that horizon. And then if we've done it in the sky, we just kind of want to match it in the ocean. It's a really simple premise. Whatever you do in the sky, you just want to kind of match in the ocean. And by going from the gradual lights around the sun to the darker shades going either side, what it does, it just tricks the viewer's eyes and it just creates the realism. So what we're trying to do is we're going to try to create really nice blended background. So when we put our waves and our clouds over the top, it's so nice and easy, and it tricks the viewer's eyes and creates a really realistic sunset. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just matching the colours in the ocean. Really easy, just like a colouring in book. So now we've got this gorgeous glow. We're just going to get even darker as we get further away and even cooler. So what we're going to do, we're just going to add more orange to the mix. So we're just getting nice orange. But as I said, orange is quite overpowering. So we're just going to put a little bit of brown in it just to suck a little bit of the colour out. And we're just going to shade around this area. So again, the sky is getting a lot cooler and a lot darker as it fades off and that sunlight fades out. So I'm just using a big brush. I'm using a nice blender brush. And all I'm doing, I'm just gently blending it into the previous colour. But as I say, don't worry about the transitions and the blending just yet. We'll do all that later. We just want to get all the nice colours on and block in our painting. And what you can do, look, this is a little trick. You can wipe away 99% of the paint and you can blend it slightly. Look, you can just wipe away. I've got a dry brush. I've got no paint on it. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just going back and forth and just blending it together. But as I say, don't worry too much at this stage. We'll come back and we'll neaten everything up in a minute. So there we go, we've got this lovely orange now, and it goes down to our ocean. Everything matches with the sunlight. So now we're going to get even cooler. So we're going to go add a little bit of white to our mix and a little bit of pink. So we're just going to get a slightly cooler colour. So if you imagine the orange is getting slightly cooler, still very warm, still got plenty of orange, but now we're going to add a little bit of pink and white, and we're just going to create sort of a nice sort of pinky orange. And we're just going to gradually blend that into the darker shade of orange. And as I say, don't worry too much about the blending. Look, you can go back and forth. We just want to block her in. So we've got this lovely glow now, and as we move away from the sun, the sky is going to get a bit cooler. But we can't really jump from yellows and orange straight to blue, because the reason we don't want to jump from yellow to blue is you get green, and you never see a green sunset. So what we want to do is we want to use purple as a buffer to not turn our painting green. So I'm using this cool iris purple, which is basically, if you've just got normal purple, which is this colour, you just add a little bit of normal purple and cobalt blue together and a little bit of white, and you should get that colour. Now if you add lots of white, you get a sort of lavender, lilac colour. So what we're going to do, we're just going to mix that into our orange. So we've got purple and white, and we've got orange and white, what we just used either side, and we're just going to mix them together. So we've got a mixture between the cool purples and the warm oranges. So as I say, all you do is just add cobalt blue to some purple, add plenty of white, and then if you just mix it into the previous mix of that orangey pink, and you get this sort of bridge tone, which just sort of bridges the two areas together in your sunset. So this is the area that when we put the clouds on top, you won't notice it so much, but it just stops your painting from turning green. So now we've got that bridge tone in the middle for protection. We're going to add some cerulean blue and cobalt blue to make a royal blue. and then we're just going to add plenty of white and make a really lovely pastel blue. So cerulean blue, which is a bit more turquoise, cobalt blue, plenty of white, and then just a dot of purple, and we should get this lovely pastel blue. And then what that does now is you've got this sort of buffer in between with that purpley orange and this light blue, and then when we do the blending in a minute, we can blend it all together and make our transitions look really pretty, so you don't notice the change in colours. So we've got this lovely transition from nice warm colours around the sun to more cooler colours as we go up into the sky. So we're going to make an even darker blue just to frame our painting, and we're going to use phthalo blue. Now phthalo blue is a lot darker, so we're going to use it just in our corners. So we're just going to use this really strong harsh blue in our corners just to frame the corners of our painting, because an easy trick to do is to make your corners dark in a painting, and that gets the viewer to focus down the middle of your painting. So by just making our corners nice and dark of our lovely canvas, we can get the viewers to focus more towards our ocean sunset. All we want to do is we want to really have darkened corners with our phthalo blue, and then what we're going to do, we're just going to mix some of that phthalo blue into the previous colour and create a bridge tone just like we did with the orange and purple. And unfortunately my camera went a bit crazy and didn't record me mixing it, so I'm just going to show you what I did. I literally created cerulean blue, cobalt blue and some white to create the previous tone that we just had, and I just added phthalo blue to that. I added less white than previously because I want it a little shade darker, and all I did is, if you have really dark phthalo blue in the corners, and then all I did was just add a previous colour but just a little bit less white in the middle here. So sorry about that, my camera went a bit nuts for some reason, must have the gremlins in. So we've got this really nice orange glow, then we've got this bridge tone, we've got a lighter blue, a darker blue, and then the phthalo blue in the corners. So I'm going to teach you now how to blend it all so it all looks much more pretty. So if your work is dry, if you dry your work with a hairdryer, if you just go over the top with the same colours, so look, this canvas is totally dry, I've got a nice big blending brush, and I've got a little bit of phthalo blue, and then I've got the middle shade, which was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, a little bit of white and some phthalo blue. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just creating X shapes. So you just merge the two colours together. Look, really easy. So you just go back and forth between the two colours. You just bridge them together. If you just create X shapes back and forth, you can just blend the two colours together. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do that with the lighter shade now. I'm just going to add more white and no phthalo blue, and I'm just going to blend the middle bit. So all you do is you take the two colours and you just take a nice dry brush and you just create X shapes. So I've got the darker shade and the light shade, so I just get plenty of the lighter shade and I just create X shapes. So look, you could do the same trick as we did before. You can wipe away near enough all the paint off your brush. Got this nice dry brush, just put a tiny bit of paint on, just a tiny bit, watch. And then where there's a transition between one colour and another, you can just glaze over the top, look, just colour it in. And this chalky residue, so look, what I'm doing is just creating little X shapes, look, going back and forth, back and forth. This chalky residue will come off your brush, and the brush is extremely soft, the bristles are extremely soft, and it just blends the two so the transitions aren't so noticeable. So I'm just going to show you now with the orange and the light orangey purple. So I'm just going to mix the two colours back because my palette's dried, and I'm just going to add a little bit of the nice orangey purple. Just going to add a little bit of pink, so it's sort of in between the two colours. Going to wipe away all the paint near enough, and look, I'm just glazing over the top. So because your canvas is dry and you've got barely any paint on your brush, it's really, really easy. Look, it's almost like a crayon. You can just shade areas and just make those transitions just fade into one another. So the colours just fade into one another. And it just makes it so smooth that it's barely noticeable. Because when you look at a sunset, you don't notice the changing colours, do you? Nature's perfect. So we want to, as artists, make all our transitions really, really nice and smooth. Notice the change in colours. So we've got this lovely transition now. We've got this lovely background sky, and we're just going to do the same around the glow because it's a bit of a jump between the yellow and the orange. So I'm just going to mix some of that buttery yellow, which was white and cad yellow. And I'm just around the sun, I'm just going to make it nice and pastel. So I'm just creating a little circle around my sun, just to create the glow effect. And then all we did, do you remember, we just added a little bit more cad yellow, just to create a harsher glow. Still got white in it, but it's just got a little bit more cad yellow. So we're just coming out from it, just getting slightly darker. And then we just add a little bit more cad yellow. So it's really easy. If you just think of a rainbow, you go from yellow to orange to sort of pinky purple to blues. So we just want to create that sort of glow around the sun. And again, if you see any transitions, like we've got a big jump between the golden colour, so I'm just adding a tiny bit more orange. Sorry, it's a bit off screen. So I'm just creating that golden colour, look, and I'm just merging the two colours. So I just want to make that glow look really, really nice and pretty. Just by adding a little bit of yellow and orange. And I'm just going to add slightly more orange. And then just here, look, I just want to bridge the two so the transition, you don't notice it. So that's all it is. It's not hard. It's just working, going back and forth, back and forth. And when you can see these really big jumps in colour, just trying to merge the two by sometimes using a bridge colour and sometimes just using a nice blending brush. If you watch Felix, he's the master of blending. He has his own brushes, so check them out. And then look, all I'm doing, I'm just coming away and I'm just creating some little sunbeams coming out from the central sun just by scraping that dry brush against the texture of the canvas. I'm just creating some little sunbeams. I'll teach you all how to do sunbeams at the end, don't worry, I'll teach you how to do that. So we have this perfectly blended background sky. So that's the hardest bit of the tutorial, I promise, because we're going to put all the easy bits on top, such as the detail. But the blending is the hardest part. So what we're going to do now, we're going to work on some of our clouds. So we're going to get some purple and orange. And I'll show you in a minute. I've just zoomed in a little bit. So purple and orange. And a little bit of purple. So purple, orange and purple. And we're just going to create a nice sort of crimsony sunset cloud colour. So I'm just adding a little bit more purple. Sorry, it's so zoomed in, I didn't realise how zoomed in I was. So I'll show you on the canvas. So plenty of crimson, and you get this sort of cherry red colour. And because you've got a little bit of purple in the mix, what it does is it just makes it look a bit more harsh and darker. So if you imagine these clouds are still near to the sun, so they're going to be very, very warm, hence we use the crimson, but they're just going to be a little bit darker, so not as orange, because we want them to stand out against our nice blended background. And the great thing is you can still see some of my cobalt blue outlines. Well, I drew some clouds earlier, and there was the blob here where I put my finger in paint so we can cover that up. So that's the great thing about acrylics, they dry so quick, so if you stick your finger in any paint or you make a mistake, you can just wait 2 minutes and just paint over the top once it's dry. And the good thing about drying your work at each stage with a hairdryer, if you do make a mistake, so say you painted a cloud and you didn't like it, you can use a wet cloth or some baby wipes and just wipe away the cloud, and it would still leave your underpainting all blended in the background. So it's an easy trick. If you always just dry your work at each stage, anything you paint over the top, if you don't like it, you can always change. Now with clouds, what I tend to do is I load up my brush with quite a lot of paint. So I've got quite a lot of that crimson. And to create a big cloud, all I do is just smear my brush back and forth, and that lays quite the thick paint. And to create the sort of fluffy edges, to make the edges look nice and soft and create the fluffiness of the cloud, all I do is I just let the paint run off the brush. So I've got hardly any paint by the end, and I just go round the edges back and forth just to create the sort of marshmallow fluffiness of the cloud. So easy trick. It's a bit like what we did with the glazing, where we just let hardly any paint come off our brush and just sort of smear it. Look, just smear it by pushing down the brush into the canvas. So we've got this nice lovely crimsony red glow around our sunset. So that's really working. But as we get cooler and further off into the distance, the sunset's going to get, the clouds are going to get more silhouetted and more darker. So these clouds are getting all the sunlight. So we're going to use cool colours. So we're going to add more purple to our mix, to our crimson, because we're going to add cooler colours to make them look more silhouetted and further away. So we're just going to add a little bit of purple and some brown. And we're just on some of these edges, we're just going to colour them in and just make them look more in the shade. So if you imagine the right hand side of these clouds is getting all the sunlight, and the left hand side is more in the shade. So that's why we're adding a little bit of purple and brown just to make them look more cooler. And you can have little ones, look, you can have little ones. If you use things like a fine liner brush, just like a smaller thin brush, it's much easier to get small thin clouds. So again, just by using the correct brushes for different stages of your painting, it makes your life so much easier. So all these areas, look at the top. So this area is getting the sun, so this area at the top, this would be more in the shade. So just by using that cooler purple and brown, still got plenty of the crimson in it. It's just like what we've done with the background sky. It just makes our transitions look really pretty. So if I zoom in for you so you can see it a lot easier. So we've got a cool shade and a warm shade. So think of yin and yang, that's the easiest way to think about it. So we're just going to colour some of these in just to make them look a bit cooler. So all I'm doing, I'm just going over the top of them really. Just shading them in. So look, just colour them in. The colours blend, it actually looks really pretty, so don't worry. Acrylics are so easy, they're perfect for beginners. It's not like oils where you have to wait for them to dry and paint your painting in stages. So if you want to use acrylics, they're perfect for more beginners and intermediate painters. Now as we move up into the painting, we're just going to get slightly cooler. So I'm just going to add a little bit more purple to the mix and a tiny bit of brown. So a little bit of purple and a tiny bit of brown. I'm just going to make these clouds on the left hand side just a little shade more darker, just to emphasize they're more in the shade, they're getting less sunlight, so they're cooler in temperature, cooler in tone, hence the fact the purple and the brown have got less crimson in them now. So I'm just going to shade over the top of these ones. So that's starting to all take shape, and then I'm just going to get more of this cool purple. So this purple is called iris purple, and all it is purple mixed with cobalt blue, and we're just going to add a little bit of cobalt blue and a bit of brown to it. So if you imagine, I've got all the warm colours here on my one side of the palette, and I've got all the cool shadow colours on the other side. So what we're doing, we're making a much more shadow colour now. So using cool colours such as purple, blue and brown, we can make this sort of nice grey. We're just going to add a little bit of black to it. So let's just test it out. Let's just add a little bit more brown just to make it more earthy and dark. That should do. And what we're going to do, if you imagine the clouds, they sort of come up at an angle. So what we're going to do, look, I'm just going to get loads of paint on my brush. I'm just going to smear it against the canvas create these big shapes of clouds. Really, really cool. Just all different sort of angles coming out. And then again, look, we're just going to have some ones going diagonal. And again, just like we did previously with that nice purple around the crimson, look, we can go around the edges of these clouds to make the edges look harsher and make them look like they're in the shade. And again, all the transitions match because we've got that lovely blended underpainting, which now we're adding the clouds over the top is triggering the eye. Now, unfortunately here, I managed to get some white on my brush. But don't worry, we can, as I say, we can just block it in. So we can just block some of these clouds in. It's a shade lighter. It should be that nice darker colour, but unfortunately I had a bit of white somehow on my brush. But what we can do is we can block it in first, and then I can just colour it in over the top. So I just want to see where I'm going to put my clouds. I'm going to have all these ones sort of going diagonal, just so it looks like they're fading out of the canvas. And as I say, it's a bit too light, this shade of purple. We want it a lot darker because these areas are really not getting any sunlight. So again, look, you can just dry it with a hairdryer, or you can just naturally wait 10 minutes and let your paint dry, and you can just shade it over the top. So that is the wonderful thing. It's so easy. Look, I can just make it darker with the darker shade by just colouring in over the top with the darker, more bluey brown shade. And acrylics always dry a tad darker. So just be aware of that. If you do the opposite and you put something down and it dries really, really dark and harsh, you can just dry your work with a hairdryer and then just mix a lighter shade and just colour it in over the top and make that area lighter. So while I've got that colour, all I'm doing, I'm just creating some little breakaway clouds, just either side of the big clouds, just so it makes it look realistic. Again, just create some of the realism. Just have these little breakaway bits and bobs. And that looks fantastic. So we've got this lovely blended background and we've got these dark silhouetted clouds. We're just going to create some nearer clouds to the sun. So if you imagine, again, just to match our background, they're going to be extremely hot. So we're going to use extremely warm colours to emphasize that. So we're going to mix yellow, orange and a tiny dot of pink. So yellow, orange and a tiny dot of pink just to create a peach tone. So think of the colour of a peach. And all we're going to do is we're going to create some clouds on that yellow background, just so it looks like the tips of these clouds are getting lots and lots of sunlight. And you can just blend it into the dark crimson colour. And again, it just makes the transitions look really realistic. So just on the tips of these clouds, we just want to emphasize some heat. And again, you can have some little ones on the horizon that are just really soft and just sort of fading into the background. So just by using this yellow, orange and a little dot of pink, look, we can just make all the tips and the clouds just softer, less harsh, and it just looks like they're blending into the crimson. So it's a really easy trick, and when it's dry, as I say, you can just sort of glaze it. You can even just get some yellow and orange, so no pink now, and look, just go around the edges and just make those edges a little bit sharper, just a bit more glowing. So just try to work on the blending between the colours. And then if you want to, what you can do is get some Cadmium Yellow and again just make the edges very soft and the transitions really soft. And just by using pure bright Cadmium Yellow, just again make the tips just blend into that background glow of the sun. So this is looking really, really pretty already. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a highlight now. So we're going to get some pure white and just a dot of Cadmium Yellow. So predominantly pure titanium white and just a dot of Cadmium Yellow. And we're going to make a really extreme highlight color now. So these are all the areas of the clouds that are just getting beam and sunlight. And by using a fine liner brush, a really thin brush, what you can do is you can outline some of your clouds and create the look that beams of light are sort of coming around its belly of the clouds, and it creates this, again, this added realism. So just by creating this really harsh bright highlight, you can sort of think, well, if the sun would be sort of hitting the bellies of all these clouds coming underneath it, I can emphasize that and add a highlight and again create a more 3D effect. And some of the nearest clouds, the sun sort of bellows round them and creates an outline. So look, you just create little outlines of the shapes of the clouds you created. And you can create this really extreme bright highlight colour. So it's so easy, you just outline your clouds. So if you just try to think, where would the light be coming from? So if it's coming from underneath, predominantly the bottom of the clouds would be getting most of the sunlight. And these ones are super close to the sun, so they would be getting extremely bright highlights. And you can put little gaps to add sort of texture to your clouds. So you can poke holes in the clouds using this bright colour. So these ones, look, they're further away. They would just sort of, the bottom of them would be just getting some of the highlights. So look, if I just do the bottom edge, that makes it look like the sun's coming up from underneath them. And he's creating that really harsh highlight. And even look, you can even have some of the breakaway ones, just pure light. So these ones are just pure beaming in the sun. I stuck my finger in here, I think. So what I'm going to show you, look, if you've got a dry painting, so you've dried it with a hairdryer, if you make a mistake and you smear something, or you do just a boo-boo and you don't like something, you can just use a baby wipe or a wet cloth, or a wet piece of kitchen roll, and you can just wipe it away, and look, your blended background and all your clouds are still there. And then you just fix it and put your highlight back. So if you take your time with the painting, you don't have to go as fast as the tutorial. And just take your time, and if you make a mistake, just wipe it away with a baby wipe. So again, these areas of the cloud and the sun, I'm just going to go around the sun with this really bright highlight to create the glow. And then some of these, they'll be getting lots of sunlight coming up from the back of them. And we can have some little breakaway ones just to really emphasize the sunlight. So again, it's just adding texture to your clouds, just creating the 3D effect. So let's just have some light. So that's looking fantastic. So let's just do the opposite. Let's mix some black and some purple. So just some black, purple and brown. So black, purple and brown to create a really harsh purple. And then in the corners, these clouds, if you imagine, these clouds are really almost silhouetted. They're going to be fading off into that dark phthalo blue. So they're getting barely any sunlight. So just like we've done, emphasized the sun and the hot colours, we're just going to use this really dark colour just in the corners, and just some of these clouds just on the opposite edge, so on the left hand edge, because these clouds, excuse me, wouldn't be getting hardly any sun on their edges. They'd be almost silhouetted. So again, we're just making some areas harsher. And again, look, we can have some little breakaway ones. Some of the edges. Okay, so we've got this wonderful sky and we've got this glow on our ocean. So now we're going to block in our water and our waves. So really, really easy now. So we're going to go back to our big brush. And we're going to try to make some of the blended colour that we made for the bridge colour. So we're going to use some pink and some orange. Some pink and some orange. Here we go to create a little peach colour. We're going to add some white just so it's not so harsh. And we're going to get some of that purple and white. Do you remember we mixed earlier? So it was purple, cobalt blue and white. So purple, cobalt blue and lots of white. And we're just going to add it to our warm orange and pink. And then we're just going to block in the bottom of our shallow water. And again, just like we did with the transition in the sky, we're just trying to match the colours in the ocean. So if you imagine, the closer to the sun, it's going to be extremely hot, and the nearer to the beach, as this sort of sunlight fades away, it's going to get cooler again. So just like the sky, we just want to emphasize that on this wet sand and this shallow water. So I'm just going to blend it really gently into that yellow and orange, just so there's not so much of a jump. So again, I'm just creating my X shapes with my brush, so the transition isn't as harsh. And then to match the sunlight, I'm just going to get some yellow and some little tiny bit of orange, just a tiny bit. And with this really smooth blender brush, look, I'm just going to go back and forth, and just create that sort of glow into that colour and into this right hand corner. So this right hand corner will be much more in the sunlight. So just by using that warm yellowy orange, we can emphasise that. I'm going to take some of the purple and white and just mix it into the tiny bit of the orange, not too much. And I'm just going to put some of that pastel blue into it, just a tiny bit of cobalt blue, just a tiny bit, just to cool it down. And on the left hand side, look, I'm just going to make it even cooler. So look, on the right next to the sun, it's going to be really, really bright. And I'm just going to glaze over the top of this side with that purple and white and that tiny bit of pastel blue. And I'm just going to make this side look like it's a bit more in the shade. And again, look, just make the transitions look really smooth. This is all dry, the canvas. So look, with hardly any paint, I'm just going over the top, just like we did with the sky. And again, it just makes the trick with the light all match. So now I'm going to teach you how to create a light effect on the shore and on the wet sand. So we're going to create some shimmering light. So we're going to get some Cadmium Yellow, and we're going to create the sort of shimmer on the sand when the ocean sort of retracts back and the wave goes back into the water. It leaves this shimmering sand, and you tend to get a reflection of the sky. And because our sunset, is really, really bright, what we're going to do, look, we're just going to use Cadmium Yellow, and we're just going to gently go over the top, just like we did with the sky, and just sort of blend this Cadmium Yellow over the top and try to match the light, just so it looks like it's shimmering down onto the ocean and onto that wet sand. And then we're just going to make a golden yellow again, so same as the sky. We're just going to add a little bit of orange, more yellow than orange please. And then either side of that, we're just going to try to create that glimmer and that shimmer. And we're just blending it into the Cadmium Yellow. And again, really, really softly, just blending the two tones together to create this lovely glow in the ocean and the wet sand. So there we go, we've done it on one side, we're just going to match it on the other side. And just let the paint run out, and it should just blend into our underpainting. And I'm just going to do the same on our shallow ocean here. So all the light matches up. And again, it just looks like that sun just glowing. So mastering light on your painting is just, as I say, it's laying the foundation with the underpainting. And then just using warm colours. And there we go, we're just putting some titanium white in the middle just to create the shimmer. Yeah, just using warm colours to create the realism. So now we're going to get some brown and some black. And all we're going to do is we're just going to block in the darker sand. So again, just think like we did with the clouds in the far background. This area is going to be far from the sunlight, so it's almost going to be silhouetted. And again, by using darker colours in our corners, it draws your eyes towards the middle and draws your eyes towards our sunset. And plus, I'm going to sign it in this left-hand corner. So I want a really dark corner so I can put my signature and get all my credit. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just going over that cobalt blue and I'm just blending this raw umber and a tiny bit of black into the underpainting. And then just like we did with the light, all I'm going to do is just get a bit of black on my brush and just in these corners, so in the right hand corner, just to frame the piece. And on the left hand corner, look, I'm just going to glaze in black over the top. So I'm just going to load up some black on my brush. And then in this corner, I'm just going to make it a shade darker because obviously I want to put my signature there. So we've blocked in all the light on our ocean, on our underpainting. So now we're going to paint the wave. So we're going to mix some cobalt blue And we're going to add some brown to the mix, so cobalt blue and brown. We're also going to add a little bit of sap green, so a tiny bit of sap green. And we're going to just start blocking in our waves. So this wave is closer to the sun. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to use a fine liner. I've got sort of a diagonal wave coming across towards the beach. And I'm just having it so it sort of rises up and sort of breaks. So I'm not making it too thick. I want it to be not as harsh as the one in the foreground. So by using cobalt blue, a little bit of sap green just to make it a bit more oceany, a little bit of brown again to suck out the colour, we can create this nice sort of harsh silhouette. But we're not using black. We want to keep our darkest darks to the foreground. So by using the green and the cobalt blue and a little bit of brown, we're making it very dark, very silhouetted, but not too harsh that it brings it really close towards the viewer. So all I'm doing, I'm going over my outline, whoops, and I'm just colouring in just sort of the shape of a near wave, and then I'm just coming that sort of diagonally, creating these little scoops, but I'm leaving plenty of gaps in the underpainting to let that light shine through. And again, I'm just using the same colour just to block in this nearer wave. So what I'm doing, I'm just covering up all the cobalt blue. So what we're going to do, we're going to put the shadow colours on first, and then we'll put all the detail and the highlights on top. So we're just going to put a nice blocked in wave first using these colours. And then what we'll do is we'll put all the detail and the highlights on the top, and I'll teach you how to paint a wave. So we're just using the exact same colour. It's just cobalt blue, brown and sap green. And as the wave sort of bellows up here towards the shore, I'm just going to have a little curve in it just so it's not so flat. So we're going to get darker as we move towards the shore. So now we're going to add in a little bit of black to the mix. So still cobalt blue, the raw umber, a little bit of sap green, and a little bit of black now to the mix, just so it's a shade darker. And the reason we're adding black and saving our darkest darks to the foreground is because black brings things towards the viewer. So if you use really harsh colours, it will make it look closer towards you. So by saving all your darkest colours, it just brings this wave really close to the viewer and makes it look like they're almost standing on this beach looking out. And then we can shade all this area, because this area would be having its back to the sun. So this would be really harsh shadows. And then I'm going to teach you a little trick now to emphasize sunlight on the wave. So we're going to get some orange and just put that in our mix. So a little bit of orange to add some heat, and a little bit of purple. And what we're going to do, just by adding orange and purple and making a more brighter tan colour, just underneath the sun, we're just going to colour in these parts of the waves. And what it does is, again, it just tricks your eyes, just like we did with the clouds, and it just makes it look less harsh because it's not such a dark, deep, harsh colour, and it just makes it look like the sunlight is caressing onto this wave. So look, just here in the middle, we're going to shade it in this lighter colour, and we're just going to let the paint run out and just gently blend it into the darker colour either side. And again, it will just look like that sunlight is beaming down onto the wave. So just off screen, sorry I'm a bit too zoomed in, all I'm doing is just making the previous colour that we used to block in the wave, which was cobalt blue, a little bit of brown and a little bit of sap green. So cobalt blue, a little bit of brown, a little bit of sap green to make the dark shade that we just used to block in the wave. And all I'm going to do is just use a fine liner, and I'm just going to come from underneath the wave and create sort of little ice cream scoop shapes. So I'm just going to create little sort of scoop shapes. And all I'm trying to do is try to add some texture and some divots to our water to again make our wave look more 3D. So if I zoom in again for you, So some of the cobalt blue is shining through, so I can see some of them and I can just go over them. But all we're doing, we're just using this harsh shadow colour. We're leaving plenty of gaps into the nice blended underpainting can shine through. But we're just creating little texturised divots, so little scoop shapes, just to texturise our water. So some of them, look, we're just coming out from the centre. And we're just going to create these shapes. Again, it's just to make it look more 3D. And the same on this side, so all on the left hand side. If you've got a really thin brush like I have, it's really easy to do just look straight thin lines. Don't worry if they're quite a little wonky. Waves are wonky. They sort of bobble up and down. It's just to add the texture. Now under the sun, we want to create that light effect again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop using the darker colour. And I'm going to go back to the brown and orangey version that we just mixed. And I'm just going to do the exact same technique, but I'm just going to use this less harsh colour. So this more tanny browny orange that we mixed, just like the middle of the wave, I'm just going to sort of match the colour in these little scoops. So I'm just going to come down, do the exact same technique. And while I've got that colour, with my fine liner, I'm just going to create a nice harsh edge where the water sort of retracts back. So we've got this lovely nice edge for our water. And I'm just going to outline it. So it all matches in the sunlight. So it's not as harsh. It looks like, oh, God, I keep whacking my painting today. And I'm just going to go back to the darker colour, which is got no orange or no purple, which was the cobalt blue, sap green and brown. And I'm just going to finish that edge and just go create a nice harsh edge, just so it looks like the water is sort of peeling back and there's a nice definition between the wet sand and the water. So that is looking awesome. So what we're going to do, we're going to mix this blue that we used for the sky. So do you remember it was cobalt blue, cerulean blue, lots of white and a dab of purple. So this colour here, so we used. And what we're going to do, we're going to block in all our sea foam. So this is all the sort of wash when the wave crashes into the shore. And just like the wave being a bit harsh and a bit dark and silhouetted, well, all this water would have its back to the sunlight. So it would be kind of in the shade. So we don't want to use white. We want to use more of a pastel blue to emphasize all this sort of sea foam and froth being in the shade. So this nice pastel blue, it really tricks the eye and it makes it look really realistic and pretty. So we're just going to block all this in and get rid of that burnt sienna. So once you've blocked it in and you're all happy with your blue, what we're going to do is we're just going to get some of the brown. So I'm just going to get some brown. And I'm just going to mix some of that blue into the brown. So I'm just going to add a little bit of brown to that mix. Just add a little bit more and a tiny bit of black, just a tiny bit. So the nice blue that we've got. And all I'm going to do is just create a not as harsh shadow colour, and I'm just going to go down around the bottom of the wave. So it's just having some of the sea foam that's in the shade even more. And again, it's just to texturise it, just to add a little layer of texture. So all these areas would be a bit more in the shade as the wave sort of bellows and crashes down. So the bottom of this sort of area would just be sort of more in the shade, hence the brown and the black added to the colour. So we've got this nice 3D effect, and what we're going to do now is we're going to add some highlights. So we're going to get some of our yellow and white. So all it was Cad yellow and white, and then we're just going to add some sort of sparkles in our crashing wave. So all I'm doing, I've just got a fine liner and I'm just adding little blobs. And I'm going to add some little dots just to look like some spray coming up. And all I'm trying to do is just make it look like the sunlight is hitting this area. So again, it all matches with our sunlight and our clouds, and everything matches. So by using the yellow and white, it just makes it warmer. So just coming over here, just have some odd dots just to create some spray. Again, just to create the 3D effect. And then we're going to get some of our blue that we mix. So cerulean blue, cobalt blue, white and a dot of purple. And we're going to add lots of white to it. So we're just going to make an off-white. It's still got lots of the blue in it, but it's not pure white. But it's a lot lighter than the previous shade. And we're just going to do the same underneath. So these areas are still getting some highlights, but they're still in the shade. And we're letting some of that underpainting, that darker colour, shine through, so we're not covering it all up. And we're just going to do the exact same techniques to the right and to the left. So that if we've done it here, we're just going to match it on the left. So all I'm doing is just creating little blobs. So if I zoom in, you can see more. And again, it's just to texturize the water. Just create the spray. And then just go get some of that blue. And I'm just going to create some curves from the top of the wave. So all I'm doing is, think of a comb where you have the little teeths of the comb. I'm just trying to create sort of little teeths that are sort of curved round. So almost cylinder. So it creates sort of a barrel effect. So it looks like the wave is sort of curling round. So not making them straight down, but look, just making them sort of curved round. And I'm just going to use that blue just here on the right hand side. And then in the middle, I'm just going to clean my brush. And I'm just going to swap over to the yellow and the white. And just in the middle, just to match the sunlight, I'm just going to have this curvature coming down, these little lines, but in yellow and white. So again, just like the spray, just like the underpainting, it's just got that nice glow and that nice sharp highlight to emphasize the sunlight. So now we've got all this texture on our wave, we're going to add some highlights here on the shadow water. So we're going to create some sea foam. So all I'm doing, I'm using a fine liner and I'm just creating random zigzags and splats and little dots to represent bubbles in the water. So I'm just trying to make all the zigzags different shapes, but I'm using a really fine thin brush again just to add the detail. So I'm just trying to make them all look different, but all I'm doing is just creating little wonky zigzags. I'm going to have some linking to one another and some not. And I'm just trying to go around the divots. So if I've got any of these dark divots, I'm just going to kind of stop and not cover them over. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating these wonky zigzags to emphasize the sea foam. And then an easy trick, once you've done a couple of them, is just to create a nice thick outline just here on the edge, just so it looks like all the sea foam as the wave comes into the shore. So all I'm doing is just creating, with that colour, that bright white and yellow, just a really nice thick edge here. The same here. So now we've got this really bright colour as the highlight. We're going to go back to our light pastel blue with plenty of white in it, do you remember? So we had that nice pastel blue with plenty of white in it that we just used on our wave. And all we're going to do, we're just going to mix some of that, and we're just going to do the exact same technique to the left and the right. So I'm still doing my random zigzags. I'm just gently blending it into that yellow and white. And I'm just going to create that nice thick ridge here on the right hand side. And I'm just going to create my zigzags and my splats. As I say, just going around the divots, trying to create the 3D effect. Some you can go on top of, it's not the end of the world if you do. But what we want to do is just sort of layer over the top this sort of sea foam. Just gently blend it into the previous colour. Just so it looks like these areas are a bit more in the shade compared to the really sharp highlights. So as I say, just take your time. Create this nice thick ridge at the bottom. And then we're just going to get slightly darker, so we're not going to have any white now in the mix. And we're just going to use that darker blue. So if I zoom out, you can see how much now it's all starting to take shape. How it's all becoming more real. It's the wonderful thing about painting, is just having confidence in yourself to have an idea and to go through all the hard stages until it manifests and you can create it. So we're just doing the same trick, look, with now this darker blue. So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, less white and a dot of purple just to make it cooler. So there we go, just finish this side to make it all match. And then I'm just going to get some of the purple and white. So do you remember that was purple, purple, cobalt blue and lots of white. And I'm just going to blend the yellow and white and the blue and white using that purple and white, just again like a bridge tone. Just so there's not so much a jump between the blues and the yellows. So I'm just using it just to make some nicer, brighter zigzags. Just going over the top. Just so the colours merge into one another. And the same here, I'm just going to use some of that purple and white. Just so there's not so much of a big jump between the yellow and white and the blue and white. You can even put some speckles in if you want to. Fantastic, easy peasy. And then we're going to mix some of that warm colour. So do you remember we did for the waves? So we're going to get some orange, a little bit of brown and some purple. So orange, a little bit of brown and some purple. And a tiny bit of yellow just to heat it up. So we want a really, really warm silhouette colour. So plenty of orange. There we go. Just going to add a little bit of white to it so it's not as harsh. And what we're going to do, we're just going to create some waves underneath the sun, fading off into the distance. So again, for fine liner, I'm just creating some straight lines. The nearer to the horizon, waves tend to be very flat. So just by going across, we can just create little thin lines that are just sort of fading out into the distance. And again, by using a warmer colour, it just matches all the transitions and it tricks the eye. So don't make them very thick, try to be as thin as you can. You can even use a flat-headed brush if you wanted to, because it's got a nice sharp flat head. Don't go too harsh. You still want them to be really, really subtle. So look, I'm just smearing one if it was too harsh. And then lastly, all I'm going to do is just get some black and a tiny bit of cobalt blue, but predominantly black. And just right underneath my wave, I'm just going to put a harsh outline. So this is the only time I'm going to use the black, apart from the corners, because I want to really, really emphasize the darkness underneath this wave. So just a little bit of black and a little bit of blue, just so it's not all black. So almost like a Prussian blue, so a bit of black and blue. So our wave is done. That is looking awesome. But what I've noticed, just here in the clouds, they've dried. Do you remember I told you acrylics dry a bit dark sometimes? And I just want to emphasize the light in the clouds. So I'm just going to get some orange and some purple. So some orange and some purple. And a little bit of pink. So orange, purple, pink. I'm going to make it a little bit warmer and brighter, I think. So it's a bit too dark. So let's test it. Because what I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to make the transitions lighter. I think the clouds just here at the bottom are a bit too harsh. We want to really emphasize the sunlight. So I'm going to put a bit of white into the mix just to lighten it up. And a bit of yellow. Let's add some more yellow for heat. A bit more orange for heat. So let's test that one out. Still a bit more white, I think, just to make it a bit more pastel. Let's test you out. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's good. Right, so what I wanted to do was I'm just going to shade over the top of some of these clouds and just make the transition look a bit more pretty and a bit more realistic. I think that the crimson is just a bit overpowering. So me being a bit of a perfectionist, I'm just going to spend 10 minutes just changing this and just going over it. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just shading over it with this nice sort of orangey yellow and pink mix. I'm just making the light look like it's shining up onto these clouds a bit more. And then when we do the sunbeams in a minute, it will look fantastic, I promise. So what we're going to do, we're just going to shade just in the bottom here of these clouds and just create a glow effect on them. Just so the jump isn't too harsh. I think it's just from the lights to the darks, it's just a bit too harsh. So I'm just using this orange. I'm just using my finger to smear it up into the other colour. So there we go. So that, look, if I zoom into you, look at that cloud in the middle now. That's got this lovely glow. That looks much more realistic. So I'm just going to take some more yellow. Just add to the mix. Just make it even brighter. So there we go, just make it a shade lighter. And just here on the bottom, I'm just going to make it a bit more yellowy. Just to really emphasize that glow from the sun. I want to make it look like it's all the base of that cloud is getting an incredible amount of sunlight. So as I say, being a really good artist is just knowing when to rework your work and just think, well, if you don't like it and you've got that intuitive feeling in your gut. I know with me, if I don't like something, it will drive me nuts. My wife goes mad. I'm sure there's a load of fellow artists because I just can't relax till I fix it. It will drive me insane. So look, what I'm doing, I'm just shading the base of these clouds just to make them less harsh. So just think all the sunlight is just hitting the base of them, it's hitting the bottom of them. So we want to really emphasize that glow. So I'm just colouring in a few of them. And this is a good trick. If you ever want to create a bit of texture in your clouds, you can just take some of the background sky. So I'm just taking some bright cad yellow. And you can poke holes in your clouds just to make them look more realistic. So watch, I'm just going to poke a big hole and just give it a bit of eddied shape. So if you ever don't like the shape of your clouds, you can just get the background colour and you can just poke some holes in the sky just to make it look a different shape. Really easy trick. And then I think what I'm going to do is just get some crimson and purple and orange. So crimson, purple and orange, just to make this sort of tanny colour. I'm just going to put some white in it. So crimson, purple and orange, a little bit of white and a tiny bit of pink. And I'm just going to create a nice pinky sort of colour. Tiny bit of brown, just suck a bit of the colour out. There we go. And I'm just going to create a nice pink little highlight on it. So again, the jump, if you think of a colour wheel, you go from yellow to orange to more sort of pinks to then crimson. And then you get cooler colours such as blue, purple and green. So just by adding a little bit of purple and a little bit of brown, we can make it more grayer. Look, just by adding that colour, we can just make it much more grayer. And then all these sort of really harsh shadows that we did earlier, I'm just going to go over the top of them and just using that sort of more sort of purpley grey, I could just make them less harsh. So I think around the sun will bleach them almost because it's so bright. So I'm just making them a little less harsh. So again, just spending 5 minutes reworking an area. Look, all you're doing is colouring it in, it's not hard. You can just create the realism that we use in the colours. So look, these ones aren't so harsh. They're getting a bit saturated with the sunlight. So that's looking better, that's looking proper glowing now. And then just gonna get some orange and some yellow. It's orange and yellow. God, that's a fiery colour, that's gorgeous. And some white, tiny bit of brown to make a really, really bright highlight. And I'm just going to outline some of these clouds. Again, just shade them so the transition all matches. Create that glow. But I just add a tiny bit of crimson and pink to that orangey mix. Still very warm. All I'm going to do is these ones, again, the jump from the light to the dark is just a bit harsh. So just by adding a little bit of pink and crimson, again, it's a little bit cooler, but it just sort of bridges the two. So just like we did with the clouds just above the sun, I'm just using a bit of more pink and crimson in the mix. Just so it's soft, but it's still a little bit darker and a little bit cooler. So again, the transitions, look, see? So let's put a big blob, look. So just using a little bit of pink and crimson into the mix. Can you see it just sort of tricks the eye? But again, look, there's a really big jump between the lights and the darks. So if I do it on this one as well, just to show you. We don't want that jump. It looks weird. Your eyes are really, really good. They'll notice it. So by just getting that sort of, adding a little bit of purple and brown like we did, look, we can just outline it and just shade it in. So look, just to make it a little bit grayer, just like we did above the sun, look, we can just outline it and just blend it into the two colours and sort of bridge the two from the darks to the lights using that purpley grey. So warm greys are really fantastic for blending. Look, they're really, really good to have the transitions. And I think that looks so much better now. It just looks so much more natural. I'm just going to get some blue and white. So I'm just going to get some of the blue we mixed up earlier. So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white. I'm going to add a tiny bit of orange, just a tiny dot of orange, just to make sort of a silver colour. And where we did the highlights, do you remember we did the highlights with the really harsh white and yellow? I'm just creating a sort of silver colour, which again has just got a bit of blue in it, and it's a little bit cooler. Just again add some outlines and some highlights, but they're not as bright, they're not as harsh. So just by using this sort of silver colour, we're doing the same idea. We're just going around the base and outlining some of our clouds. But now with a cooler highlight, so it just looks, again, like it's fading away. So look, just loading up my brush, just outlining a few of them. Just thinking where that sunlight would be coming round the cloud. So it's so pretty. I love painting clouds, it's so relaxing. And look, we could have some little breakaway ones just in the highlights. And the same over here. Why not? See, all these finishing touches, they really make the painting come alive. It's just having the patience to push through it. And then we're just going to get some yellow and orange and a little bit of white. So yellow and orange and a little bit of white just to make it a pastel highlight. So because it's got a little bit of orange, it's not as harsh. And what we're just going to do is just outline the left hand side, some of these clouds. So same principle, we're just doing the same techniques over and over again. We're just reworking it. Where we've fixed the clouds, we're just putting in the highlights back. And then please dry your painting, completely dry your painting before you attempt to do this next stage, because I'm going to teach you how to paint sunbeams. And the reason I would like you to dry your painting, because if you do one wonky or it goes wrong, you can just wipe it away, because all it is like a little chalky residue. So if you have a dry painting, you can just use a baby wipe or a wet cloth just to wipe it away. So I'm going to teach you now how to all paint sunbeams. So what we do is you get a totally dry brush. We're going to just mix some of that same colour. So it was yellow, orange and lots of white. We've got a completely dry brush. I've got no water on my brush, okay? And it's a really soft bristled brush, so just like a blender brush, just really soft to touch, this brush. And we're going to wipe away, once we've mixed up our paints, we've got yellow, white and orange. We're going to wipe away 95% of the paint. So look, I'm just using my scruffy painting clothes. And we're just going to come up diagonally from that central sun. So all I'm doing, I'm putting hardly any pressure onto my canvas. I'm barely touching the canvas. And I'm just leaving this really nice chalky residue onto my canvas. So look, I'm just coming out diagonally and I'm just creating this really subtle, wispy, chalky residue onto the canvas. So as I say, if you dry your painting before you attempt this, if you have any problems with it, you can just wipe it away. So all we're doing, we're just glazing over the top with a dry brush, and then to emphasize them you can just go over the top. So if you want to make them a bit more brighter, you can just go over the top once you've laid it down. So all I'm doing, I'm just going over the top with a little bit more paint here at these sides and just soften it up using my finger. And then we can have just a little bit more paint here. Same here, just right near the sun. We can have one coming out this way. So there we go. And one coming out here. One at the bottom. So I just want them really soft. So I'm just going to get some more yellow and white. I'm going to add more yellow and white to the mix now. And I'm just going to wipe away most of the paint. I'm just going to have a little bit brighter ones in the middle. Again, just because I want to highlight the middle. So I'm just going to have a diagonal one coming out here. Just going to get some more paint, wipe it away. And have one coming straight up now. Straight up from the middle. So again, just laying them down first. And if I want to really emphasize them, look, I can just go over the top. Just making them a bit more neater and brighter. So look, I'm just going to get some paint, wipe it away, and use that yellow and white just in the middle here. So I'm just going to use the yellow and white nearest to the sun. So it really creates the glow. And I'm just going to create a little circle around the sun again, just for the emphasize the glow. Again, just make it really soft. I'm just going to get a little bit of yellow, because if you make a mistake, look, just like I was saying earlier, you can always put a bit of the sky back in. So you can just put the sky back in and make them a little bit softer. So there we go, just sort of glazing over the top. So that's looking so cool. And then I'm going to teach you a little trick here. So I'm just going to get some crimson, some orange and some purple. A little bit of brown. What you can do, a little bit of white just to make it not as harsh. Look, what you can do is you can have some in front of the sunbeam. So look, if you can paint over some areas of the sunbeam. And you can have some with the sunbeam behind it, and again it just creates the 3D effect. And just by using a warmer tone, so I've just got a little bit of the crimson where the sunbeam is going through the cloud, it just creates the look again of realism, because it looks like the light is going through that cloud and making it more highlighted. So I'm just putting some crimson here because it's a bit warmer, just where that sunbeam is coming up through the cloud, just on its edges. So anywhere where the clouds kind of meet the sunbeam. So look, this area is meeting the sunbeam. We're just going to make this a bit warmer. So that crimson is nice and warm. And then where it goes through the light, look, we can do the same. Once we've coloured all these in, we could do the same with the highlights. So if I zoom in for you, we're going to mix the two highlight colours. We've got the bright yellow and white, and then we've got the yellow, orange and white. So look, we've got the bright yellow and white at the top, and we've got the orange, yellow and white here. And all we're going to do is we're going to create highlights where the sunbeam is going through the clouds. So any area where the sunbeam is going through the clouds, we're just going to create a nice sharp highlight. So look, we're just going to use this nice bright yellow, orange and white here. Same here. Just so it looks like that light is going straight through those clouds. And you can just mix between the two. So look, up here I'm going to use the yellow and white. So really, really bright ones. Just where there's this really big sunbeams going through, look. And just here. So any areas where the sunbeam is going through, if you just think of a line, just following that line and just going around it, look. Creating an outline. Look at that. Little trick. So let's do it here on this one. So look, just in line with that sunbeam. And again, it just creates an added layer of realism. So I think she's finished. So I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner. So you've learned how to paint an underpainting. We've got the yellow glow around the sun. You go to the orange, and then we have the orange and purple and white as a buffer, so we don't get a green sky. We've got the light blue and then the darker blue where we darken our corners. And then you've learned how to do the same with the clouds. So we've got this light effect in our clouds and the lovely transition from hots to colds with our clouds. You've learned how to mirror that effect onto the ocean, how to create and paint waves that look really realistic, how to paint sea foam and obviously add highlights and detail to the top, and then how to paint a shimmer in your sand and bring the wave towards the viewer. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. My name is Murray. Thank you so much for Felix for letting me be a guest collaborator here on his channel. He's a wonderful guy, so please like and subscribe to his channel because he supports lots of fellow artists like myself. So you can check me out at M Stewart Paintings. My name's Murray. Thank you so much and take care. Bye.